Cool, thank you very much everybody. This talk is going to be about indoor skydiving, Olympic dreams and beyond. I'm Marc Fletcher. I've been skydiving for about 15 years and competing almost as long. I helped run the BCPA when I was at university, which is quite a few years ago now. And I've also been on BPA Council for a year in 2013. I plan to talk for about 20-30 minutes, obviously about indoor skydiving, because I'd like to try and leave as much time at the end as possible for questions. And I would like to start with a question. Who here has flown in a wind tunnel? Woo! Cool. Easy crowd. Easy crowd. Okay, and who loved flying in an indoor wind tunnel? Awesome. Great. All right, so hecklers can sit at the back. So we obviously wouldn't get very far with a talk like this without wind tunnels, so I thought I'd probably start there. Does anyone know when the first sort of commercial wind tunnel opened to the public? Yeah, somewhere in the States?
1920.
1920. So the first wind tunnel actually opened, there were two. 1982 was one in Vegas and one in Flyaway, which I had to look up. This is in Tennessee. And we didn't get our first wind tunnel in the UK until 2005, when there was none, and then all of a sudden there were two. We had Air Kicks in Milton Keynes and we had Bedford. And since then, tunnels have been exploding. So up until around 2000, we just had the one or two tunnels scattered about. There were some more military-only tunnels, but I'm not counting those. And sort of since then, the number of tunnels opening has just accelerated. And in the last 3 years alone, we had 75 new tunnels open. So that's like 25 tunnels a year. And as of today, there's 36 more under construction, with 70 more sort of announced and planning permissions being approved. So hopefully what people take away from this is that tunnels are really just starting out to become a thing. Does anyone know roughly how many drop zones there are in the world? So the best number I could find using dropzone.com was that there's about 1,300 tunnels, 1,300 drop zones around the world. So we're still going to have to wait another sort of 50 years or so until we have as many tunnels as drop zones. But that doesn't stop a lot of new cool things developing as of today. One of the biggest sort of developments that I see with wind tunnels is the emergence of new disciplines. And that's super interesting, because as someone who loves the sport, new disciplines is something that you get to enjoy if you've been doing it for yonks, something completely new. So in free fly, when free fly first moved into the tunnel, what people did was really just take the things that existed in the sky and try to put them in the tunnel. So for free fly, that meant things like free rounds and compulsories. And then in 2013, some very pioneering free flyers went, well, let's see if we can replace the compulsories with something else. And the goal was to make the free flying part more spectator friendly. And that's now called dynamic flying. So the compulsories were replaced with speed rounds, where people have to enter the tunnel, fly the particular sectors as quickly as possible, that many number of times, and then get out. And people now refer to that as dynamic flying. It was created by the athletes, for the athletes, and one of the consequences of that is that as a discipline it's still evolving. There's new things coming out for dynamic flying the whole time. And it is, like I said, very, very spectator friendly. They might not know exactly what the people doing are flying, but they can definitely relate to the busts when the lights go off, and they can understand that there's a race component to it where you've got two teams trying to beat each other. And for me, in the tunnel, the fact that things are more spectator friendly is one of its great strengths. Dynamic flying has become so popular these days that the FAI have actually adopted it as the official free fly competition discipline. And yeah, still changing. Dynamic flying is becoming so popular these days that at some competitions there's now more teams flying dynamic than there is FS, and that's sort of again a sort of a first for the sport. And it's still evolving. You've got two-way dynamic, you've got four-way dynamic. The two-way dynamic tends to be the more popular discipline at the moment, simply because it's easier to get one other person to join you and have fun than it takes 3 people to join you to have fun. And anyone who's done 4-way or 8-way FS will appreciate the difficulty in doing that. The compulsories do still have a place in free flying, but you tend to find those in VFS these days as opposed to the actual sort of free fly competitions. Okay, so then freestyle. Everyone has probably seen some of the amazing stuff that people are doing in solo freestyle in the tunnel these days. And out of all the disciplines, this seems to be the one that's generating the most viral views on Facebook. I just searched Facebook for indoor skydiving, and what popped up as the very first video is it Maya Kaczynska? Yeah. If I've pronounced that correctly. This was one of the very first videos that kind of just exploded on social. And for anyone who hasn't seen it, I'm just going to play a very short clip. Okay, FS. Yeah, there's not much to say about FS. No one's pulled their finger out in FS and come up with a new discipline. So if there's any area where there's potentially still the opportunity for people to come up with something new, something interesting, it's probably within the world of FS. So the popularity and the emergence of these new disciplines has obviously translated into competitions. And that's another area where growth has been absolutely phenomenal in the last 10 years. So at the very first World Challenge in 2006, we had 12 FS teams and 11 FF teams. If anyone's been to the World Challenge today, they'll consider this to be a tiny, tiny, tiny event. I tried to find out if this was the first international wind tunnel competition, but there were some comments that suggested there were some in the States before this. If anyone happens to know, I'd love to chat to you afterwards. And since 2006, the World Challenge has grown to 70 FS teams, including FF teams and all of the extra disciplines. 8-way was introduced last year as well. And the FAI, the Federation for what's the definition of FAI? Federation or International, something like that. So this is the world organisation that organises air sports, and they've recognised that indoor skydiving and wind tunnels are a future area of interest, and that meant that they actually started the first indoor competitions at the international level in 2014 with the World Cup. And in 2015, as we do for outdoors, we have sort of alternate years, we also had the first Indoor Skydiving World Championship. In 2016, there were 14 tunnel competitions worldwide. In 2017, there were 21. And in 2018, there were 28. So in terms of the tunnel competitions at the international level, we're seeing 30% year-on-year growth, which that's absolutely massive for something that's expanding. Does anyone happen to remember what the winners of the 2006 Bodyflight World Challenge were in FS and Freefly?
Airspeed.
Yeah, so Airspeed was the winners, and I think they held on to the the championship for 6 or 7 years before Hayabusa took it off them, and they've held it ever since. What about free fly? No, so element R, which was Fabian Rydell and I can't remember the other competitor, but interesting bit of trivia for you. So another development is that the World Challenge is now also the qualifying event for British participants at the world level. So why bother competing indoors when people have been competing outdoors for quite some time? So I put this question to Roy Jansen. So he's an ex-Hayabusa member. He's got tons and tons of world level gold medals. And what he turned around and said was competing indoors is very time effective compared to jumping. If you go jumping, you're typically going to have to take out a week, and the weather might not be good, and it takes time and packing to actually get on the plane and jump. There's almost 100% guarantee of good weather. For people that have been flying in the tunnel long enough, you'll know that it's not guaranteed. Things can break down with tunnels, but it's far more reliable than outdoors. The environment's safer, so when you fly in a wind tunnel, there's a complete negligible risk of death. You can see other people flying directly in front of you. So from a spectator perspective, and people that come along with you, who might not be interested in jumping, but they like spending time with you, and that's potentially more entertaining. It's easy to broadcast and attract people from outside the sport. And ultimately, as a sport, if we want to grow, that's something that everyone should be taking quite seriously. It's accessible for young people, so one of the benefits of it not being quite so risky is that people can get started at a younger age. And if anyone has gone to the tunnel with young people, you'll recognise that, or I'm sure you'll agree, kids love this kind of thing. You're flying without a parachute, so for a lot of disciplines that means more movement. It's more dynamic. And last, there's very big prize money. There's not many outdoor skydiving competitions where you have the opportunity to win prize money. For a lot of the teams that do this, semi-professionally, they're spending huge amounts on training, and prize money can go a long way to drawing in additional people to taking part. At the last FAI World Cup in Bahrain, the total prize fund was about $200,000. So first place teams were walking away with $10,000, $20,000 in prize money. That obviously goes a long way to helping their training budgets. And with that, I'm sure they've already been applauded for their excellence, but a shout out to the British female team, NFTO, who destroyed their competition at the last FAI World Cup in Bahrain. So, I think they set an absolutely fantastic example. Not only are they awesome indoors, they're awesome outdoors. I don't know which they prefer, yeah, I'd love to see a lot more of this. And as I referred to on the last slide, tunnels allow younger people to get involved sooner. And if we're serious about wanting to be winning in the future, we have to consider our grassroots organisations, and there's lots of them around the world. We've got the FFA Juniors in France, the Cubs in Czech, the Canadian Junior Indoor Skydiving Team, which is just a massive organisation. I remember being out in Poland, and I think there were like 30 kids from the Canadian Federation. We've got the IBA Global Kids in the States, and we also have the recruits in the UK. Okay, so onto the big stuff. So Olympics. So in 2015, the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, ratified Paris's Olympic application. In March 2017, the French Parachute Federation started the ball rolling to make sure that the people that were going to be involved in the decision-making process knew about indoor skydiving, and that hopefully they'd take it seriously when the time came. It wasn't until September in 2017 that Paris was actually awarded the 2024 Games. Since then, the French Parachute Association has really been doubling down on the project. They've got people working on this full time. And the reason they're putting so much effort in is that, unlike with previous Olympics, the IOC introduced the possibility of temporary events into Games, I think, from 2020 onwards. And that's meant that the Climbing Federation have managed to get events into the Tokyo Games in 2024. I think it's called speed climbing, sport climbing. And the French Parachute Association has been working quite closely with the Climbing Association to find out exactly how did you do it, what issues came up, what kind of things do we need to consider, so that they essentially have people who've been through this process already that hopefully will be a big plus. And quite naturally, the FAI have spoken to lots of participant countries and said, you know, would you guys be interested in this kind of thing? And everyone said, yeah, of course, it'd be a fantastic idea. And one of the things the French Federation has done is release a promo video in the hopes that, you know, this would end up in front of the people making the decisions. So if people haven't seen that video yet, I'm going to quickly play you the start of it. Okay, so that's kind of a timeline of where things have got to today. So it's going to talk a little bit about sort of what the next hoops are that ultimately people need to jump through. So in July of last year, the IOC informed the Paris Olympic Organising Committee that they were changing the application process for these new temporary sports. They've clearly learned from the next Olympics. So instead of calling for applications, the IOC said to the Paris Organising Committee, they need to decide which sports they are potentially interested in including in the 2024 Games. And they should then contact the sport associations and say, hey, what can you guys do? And what that ultimately means for the organising committee is that they need to find sports that they feel are compatible with their Olympic vision. And for Paris 2024, that is a youthful, innovative, spectacular game showcasing France's most iconic landmarks and in line with the Paris 2024 global sports concept. So we will have to wait and see if the French Parachute Association gets contacted, and if they're going to be contacted, it will probably be by the end of Q3 of this year. The inside scoop is that they are already interested. So everyone can hopefully cross their fingers to make sure that we make it to the next stage. So that all sounds great. At the moment, the door remains open for indoor skydiving, maybe to be in the 2024 Olympics. What are some of the gotchas that we already know about? The big one is that the Olympics are quite limited in the number of athletes and events that can take part. What that means for indoor skydiving potentially is that only specific disciplines might be selected for inclusion. Just because indoor skydiving is in the Olympics doesn't mean everything we currently see at international competitions will be part of that. And the next big one is that the Paris organising committee might turn around and say, we would love to have indoor skydiving in the Olympics, but none of the disciplines you have right now interest us. Think of something new. Think of something that is going to energize and entertain the masses. So that's where things like the promo video that the French Federation has done is supposed to help. And you can help as well. The French Parachute Association has invited, and they strongly encourage people with ideas for potential disciplines to send them their ideas, make a short promo video, let them know what you're thinking, and you can either get in touch directly with the French Parachute Association or come and speak to us, and we can help you put something together. Cool. So that's sort of a quick synopsis of where things are right now with the Olympics. Realistically, there's probably a less than 5% chance that it will work out, but we're all optimists, I hope, and 5% is definitely enough to hold on to right now. Okay, so on to indoor associations. So there already are a lot of indoor skydiving associations around the world, and they vary quite drastically in what they aim to achieve. We've got competition and athlete development focused associations like the US Indoor Skydiving Association. They officially existed in 2017. We've got instructor and coach development, so the IBA and tunnel instructor 2003 and 2009 respectively. And we also have for-profit associations such as the Indoor Skydiving Australia Group 2013, whose goal is to build wind tunnels and try and get the public to come and fly. What about a British association? So I'm sure everyone will agree that the BPA does an absolutely fantastic job at organising skydiving and all of the complexities and challenges that involve with that, whether it's pilots, whether it's jumping, whether it's external issues in the sport. But understandably, they have limited resources, and as a consequence of the original remit of the BPA, what that means is that they're probably focusing a vast majority of those resources on outdoors. And what that has sometimes meant for indoors is that things might happen slightly slower than we might ideally want. So what could a British association help with? Well, primarily we could help be a catalyst for a lot of the existing ideas and events that exist throughout the UK. And it would allow for a much bigger focus on indoor specifically, allowing it to evolve at its own pace. And ultimately allows the BPA to keep focusing their resources where it matters, and that's keeping people jumping out of planes, which is always going to be a lot of fun. Everyone's going to be looking forward to that. Sorry if that's me. Cool, all right, so on to the British Indoor Skydiving Association. So after a lot of sort of preliminary discussions with the BPA in early 2008, we've launched BESA, and we've started officially sort of trying to work out what a future relationship might look like. At the moment, the founding members are myself, Hari Ganapathy, which is so sat at the front, Adam Matakola, who's heavily involved in Bodyflight, Victoria Bradley, who I don't think is here today, and Gareth Hicks. And ultimately, our goal is to be a not-for-profit association that helps support and promote any groups or individual to the betterment of the UK indoor skydiving community. So the last thing we want to do is step on anyone's toes. We want to provide that environment where indoor can sort of continue to grow and evolve. Where are we now? Okay, so nothing is set in stone right now. We've had lots of constructive meetings with people at the BPA. And in the short term, BESA is going to be responsible for allocating sporting licenses for people that want to go to international competitions. We'll be organising the British Indoor Nationals, and we'll also be doing the competitor selections for international events this year. what we're working on, you don't need to read this whole long list, but long story short, it takes a lot to set up an organisation properly. We want to make sure that we're accountable, that we're transparent, that we ultimately also have the time to spend on the goals that we have. Right now, we're still working on step one, which is setting up a limited company, and it turns out that's actually quite hard to do if you want to have British and association in your name.
But we're almost there.
But we're almost there. We were hoping to have that sorted by this event, but yeah, a couple of last-minute snags held us up. Okay, beyond setting up the organisation and sort of covering the basics, we would like to target dedicated sources of funding and or sponsorship. We don't anticipate this is going to be easy, but by focusing just on indoor, we're hoping that some of the reasons people may previously have given for not sponsoring skydiving might make it a bit easier. We would like to invest in creating opportunities and raising awareness for the general public about indoor flying. You know, we obviously recognise that all of the wind tunnels are already involved in advertising indoor skydiving, so there might not be a huge opportunity for us there, but anything we can do will hopefully be a net positive. We want to help encourage more participation at the fun tunnel events that already exist around the UK. Has anyone here heard of the Chicks Tunnel Jam? Just to pick one of those events that happens at Bedford.
Chick Jam.
Chick Jam, sorry. So of the people I've spoken to that have gone to the Chicks Jam, they love it. But I'd probably bet that a lot of people who would otherwise enjoy it don't even know it exists. And I think one of the things we can do, at the start is help advertise these types of events, not only to help more people go, but people, who might previously have not considered, gives them additional ideas. A UK Tunnel League is an idea that's floating around. We don't know exactly how you can keep that fair, given that people might be able to practice multiple times, but it's an idea nonetheless. And yeah, it'd be great if we got our own TV channel for indoor skydiving, but that's probably more of a pipe dream at this stage. So we're looking for volunteers. If anyone in this room has great ideas for what an indoor skydiving association should strive for, please let us know. If you have any skills in accountancy, legals, branding, anything like that, please let us know. And if there's anything you'd like to contribute, again, please get in touch. Thanks very much for listening. You can get in touch with us at britishindorskydiving.co.uk. We've got some contact forms there. Or on Facebook, or British Indoor Skydiving. Thank you very much for listening. Does anyone have any questions?
I was thinking about the slide you projected before about formation skydivers pulling their fingers out in terms of creating that discipline. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's formation skydiving, four-way and eight-way, we all know it, and there's vertical formation skydiving, that's fine. Then there was a development from free fly to dynamics, okay? Now, perhaps that's the point that's missing. And I've seen on Facebook there's some people already trying to organize a dynamic discipline for flat flying. Perhaps that could be an idea. And that leads to the question. If someone has a great idea and would want to channel that through to ultimately the French Federation or the Olympic Committee, would you be the first point of contact?
Yeah, that's probably your best bet.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're in contact with the French Federation on this stuff, so if you do have ideas for something different, because they're also looking for ideas that are going to be different, and they've had a test event just last year in November on some different ways in terms of format for just FS 4-way. So they're looking for these different ideas. So if anyone has these ideas, please filter it through us, and we will take that definitely through. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think from the French Federation's point of view, they want to be fairly proactive in saying, what are all of the things that the Olympic Organising Committee might come back with and say, oh, we don't like this, we don't like that. They want to try and solve all of these problems ahead of time, and thinking of new disciplines and new ideas is part of that.
Hey Mark, so there's a current problem right now where juniors can't get into be selected for the world stuff because they're not a BPA member. So are you hoping to overcome that problem? Yeah, so as of this year, you no longer need to be a BPA member in order to get a sporting licence to compete. So in terms of juniors taking part,
hopefully that's going to be smoother from this point on.
Well, I'm glad that's been fixed.
There's a question down here.
Do you have to have 2 separate sporting licenses, or are they one in the same?
It's one and the same. It's an FAI sporting license. So once you have one, it's valid for anything that requires it. Feedback.
Just referring to the point about the youths, with the Olympic Committee, you find that sports will go for the Youth Olympics first, which is an under 20, which is mainly under 20s. Are the French Federation considering that, because that's how you normally get a sport into the Olympics? And with the youths, that should help BESA, in theory, with the youths. If we get the youths in, normally then goes into adults. That's how the Olympic Committee normally works. That's just my experience with other sports. So it's just a point to raise there. That could be a way to get the kids in.
Yeah, I think at this stage they're approaching it from every possible direction, and what they've already said is that if they are unsuccessful in 2024 for the Olympics, I can't remember who has the Olympics after that. I think it's in the US. The US Indoor Skydiving Association has already said what didn't work there, we'll try it differently and we'll go at it again. So there's definitely a lot of momentum behind it right now, even if it perhaps takes longer than we want it to. There's some questions over there.
I'll just be like that. What are the competitions internationally planned for 2019, and how are you planning on doing installation? I know you mentioned Bodyflight.
Yeah, Hari's been dealing with that.
So you can have a solution for disciplines which might not have been at the Bodyflight last year, or might not have been announced as qualification last year.
Okay, so
don't need no microphone.
I'm told my voice carries, so I'll just you can hear it, yes? Yeah, okay. So this is a transitionary sort of year that we're in now, obviously, from the BPA being in charge of selection to devolving that to us here at BESA. So what we're doing for selection for the 2019 competitions, which at this stage the only one is the indoor world meet in April. So we're basing that on last year's results at both the World Challenge for FS and the official UK Nationals for the Artistics. We've been in contact with the relevant teams that participated in those events. For the 8-way specifically, we were looking at the 8-way event that was run at the challenge last year. To keep in mind, this 8-way event that's going to be happening in April is a more or less a test event for the FAI. It's a challenge event. No team competing in this event is going to get medals or anything of that such. It's purely to try out the event. And as such, we've been in touch with the relevant team that performed at last year's challenge to put that forward. Look, I think one of the things that's worth mentioning as well is that when it comes to competition selection, there is quite the process that's already in place with the BPA. With us at BESA, given that it is a transitionary sort of phase that we're in now, we are looking at how we can take rules going forward into things that will constitute relevant lineup changes and how that's going to affect it going forward. But like I said, this is that transitionary phase, so we're basing it purely on the events that happened last year, and we're going to use that to move forward. And I think we're just about there in terms of the teams and for the British delegation. But there will be things that will be changing as we move forward. I hope that answers your questions.
So you're talking about a lot of selection for the world class events. Is BESA going to support the lower level, sort of your rookies, your single A? Is there definitely going to be support to bring,
Yeah. So selection for FAI events at at the open level is one thing, but The other thing that we are very cognizant of, and one thing that we are going to be looking at, is how we develop the junior category within the UK, and how we bring up, you know, the amount of people that are much younger than the age of 12, which is what constitutes a junior competitor. I mean, just as a stat, I'm not sure the exact number, but I know that at the last Global Kids Challenge, the amount of competitors that were under the age of 10 were much more than the ones that were over the age of 10. And the minimum age to compete as a junior competitor, according to FAI, is 12. So it's something that we are definitely keeping in mind, and it's something that we definitely want to keep in consideration as we move forward with how we want to, you know, how we want to structure the development and keep in mind the junior competitors that we have, because they're going to be the lifeline for, you know, the pool of competitors that we're going to have to develop going forward.
So, sorry, Ari, with the development of tunnels that we're seeing pop up all over the world now, and you know, now we're even seeing wingsuiting tunnels pop up. Do you think there'll be much focus on wingsuiting competitions for the future?
I think for us, it's one step at a time. I mean, BESA is still very much in its infancy. So, you know, if the actual discipline of indoor wingsuiting is, you know, starts developing, then yeah, absolutely we would consider that and look at how we can apply that to how we do this in the UK.
Sweet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned a UK Indoor Nationals. Are you going to carry on piggybacking off the World Challenge as it stands for this year? Yeah,
for this year it will be piggybacked off of the World Challenge that's happening in April. It'll be both for artistics and for FS. How that's going to work beyond 2019 is we're still trying to figure out. But you know, obviously, if people have suggestions around that, we're open to that, because you know we want to make this we want to make this for everyone, not just something that we say.
And the last thing we want to do is change something that's working.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, we want the transition to be as predictable and as gentle as possible. Where for the time being, nothing much should change visually to people. And then it's only over time, as we hear from people and what the indoor flying community wants, similar to how it's working with dynamic flying, will we make changes. So
yeah, well, for the because World Challenge used to like be FF and FS, and they kind of dropped the FF from it, and then it kind of got thrown back in once this whole we've got these international competitions to deal with.
Yes.
This token FF competition kind of arrived on Saturday morning, interfering with all the other flat flyers and what are these guys doing here. It's been kind of like a 4-round competition, which kind of it's all right, but it's kind of a bit like it's not really a competition.
Back to back, it was.
Yeah. It's a bit ad hoc.
So I can't say that it's not going to be ad hoc in the sense that it's going to be organized last minute. It is already on the cards to be organized in April. The how it's going to be run or all the the logistics of it is still being set up, but it's not something that's going to be last minute. I can guarantee that.
Okay. So Adam Matacola is taking the lead on the FF side of things.
Who is also a part of our organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Cheers.
So in terms of the the selection for the indoor skydiving kind of nationals, as you will, obviously using World Challenge this year, but it's quite early in the year, so a lot of teams won't have actually reached their peak in terms of their performance. Would you have something a bit later on in the year, kind of like around revenge time, or even piggybacking or taking revenge and using that as kind of the qualifier after teams have trained through the whole year and they're kind of at their peak?
So that's it's a very good point to bring up, and I'm not saying that it's set in stone how we're trying to work this, but the one thing that we're trying to keep in mind as well is how indoor works in hand with outdoor. And one of the drives in a more bigger picture is that we wanted the big picture is that indoors always had some clashes in the past with outdoor especially in terms of the competitions, and I'm talking about the international competitions. So there is a drive to try and push indoor into one part of the year and outdoor into the next.
And that's something the FAI is
trying to work with in terms of like how the scheduling works as well. And that's not an easy thing to sort out, because there are multiple tunnel competitions that are happening all the time. But when it comes to the actual international competitions, where they've been a bit scattered as well, but they are trying to focus that on the first part of the year. So i.e. you will have the indoor season finish in April when you have the FAI World Cup or World Championship. And then everyone is free to move on into the outdoor season, which they can then focus on. Now, as we said before, this is that transitionary sort of phase that we're in now. Nothing's set in stone for us on how we want to run this, but as it stands at the moment, we are going to be looking at using April as in the World Challenge and the Artistics Nationals for the selection for the following year. Because if you are, for example, if you are purely just an indoor competitor and you go and compete in April and you have, and the result means that you are going to compete internationally, that will give you potentially a full year of training to go and compete internationally at the next world competition. So, you know, you raise a very good point, and like I said, nothing's set in stone, and we are open to suggestion, but it's something that we are working through.
Any other questions? No? All right. Well, thank you very much for listening. Hope it's been interesting.